A number of strange and inexplicable disappearances have occurred in remote wilderness areas across the globe. These regions are often treacherous and unforgiving, posing significant challenges for human exploration. Despite the inherent risks of venturing into such areas, a certain number of these cases feature strange clues and odd circumstances. One such case took place at Crater Lake National Park in Oregon. The park is part of the majestic Cascade Mountain range in southwest Oregon. The area is defined by sprawling forests, fields of wildflowers, tranquil meadows, and towering cliffs and peaks. At the heart of the park lies Crater Lake, a stunningly beautiful body of water with a deep azure blue hue. Covering 21 square miles, Crater Lake reaches a maximum depth of 1,949 feet, making it the deepest lake in the United States and the third deepest worldwide by average depth. Despite its stunning beauty, Crater Lake has been the site of numerous strange and unexplained disappearances. In one such case, a man disappeared in the wilderness of Crater Lake National Park, leaving behind only odd clues and a bizarre set of remains that defy explanation. The details of his disappearance and later discovery have caused many to suspect that something otherworldly or inexplicable is at play in this remote wilderness area. In 1975, Charles McCuller, a 19-year-old aspiring photographer, was drawn to the snow-covered Crater Lake National Park. He left his home in Virginia in 1974 for a cross-country photography expedition, traveling by bus and stopping at various places along the way to hike, explore, and take photos for a travel journal. He arrived in Eugene, Oregon in January 1975, staying with a friend for a couple weeks. During this time, he planned a 2-day trip to Crater Lake for some winter photography work. He packed his gear and set out alone. Despite the harsh weather conditions, he was well prepared for his trek, and with his camera, he ventured into the wilderness. As was typical for this adventurous photographer, his friend thought little of it when Charles said he'd return in a few days. But when 2 days passed without any sign of him, his friend just assumed that he had extended the trip. But when another day passed with no word, authorities were notified. Investigators found witnesses who had seen Charles in the Diamond Lake area, about 45 minutes by car from Crater Lake. It is believed that he continued his trip from there and arrived safely at the lake. However, other witnesses reported seeing Charles hiking along the North Road, which was unusual since about 5 feet of snow covered that route at the time. It was speculated that he may have switched trails upon encountering the snow, but no one knew for certain, and authorities could find no trace of him or his campsite in the area. Despite exhaustive efforts by investigators and the tireless dedication of Charles's father, who flew out to assist in the search and camped on the shore of Crater Lake all summer, no trace of Charles McCuller was discovered at that time. The search, which strangely included the FBI, was hindered by enormous snowdrifts, some measuring over 12 feet deep. The lack of evidence fueled theories about his disappearance, including the possibility that he altered his plans and left the park on his own, or that he fell victim to foul play. Charles's friends and family suspected foul play, and the FBI's involvement seemed to validate their concerns. It was almost unheard of for the FBI to join a missing persons case without clear indications of foul play. The lack of evidence led to speculation that Charles might have vanished to begin a new life elsewhere. However, his friends and family maintained that he would never have done such a thing. Law enforcement began to assume that he had simply become lost and perished in the wilderness. Another theory was that he had been kidnapped or even killed. Charles's friends and family believed he may have fallen victim to foul play, which could explain the FBI's involvement, though no public statement was made to that effect. Authorities maintained that there was no evidence supporting this theory. Their primary focus was that he had either run away or experienced some type of misadventure in the wilderness. Meanwhile, there were no fresh leads, and it seemed as if he had simply vanished off the face of the earth. It wasn't until the following year, in October 1976 that two hikers discovered a battered, torn-up backpack in a remote canyon 12 miles from where Charles had supposedly camped. They took the pack to the closest ranger station, and inside a side pocket, they found a set of keys to a Volkswagen, the same type of car Charles had owned. Believing they'd uncovered a break in the case, rangers compared the keys with a photocopy of Charles's car key and found that they were one and the same. A patrol was quickly dispatched on horseback where the backpack had been found. It wasn't long before human remains were discovered near the creek, but what seemed like the final piece of the puzzle would only lead to even stranger developments. On a nearby log, a search party found a pair of jeans. Strangely, the jeans were in remarkably good condition despite prolonged exposure to the elements. However, there was no sign of a shirt, coat, or boots in the area. Inside of the socks sticking out of the jeans, broken toe bones were found. The jeans themselves contained only a single broken shin bone. Adding to the mystery, the belt was unbuckled and the buttons were undone, suggesting the victim may have removed them in the cold. Oddly, the rest of the body was missing, and a ranger described it as though the man had simply melted away. Eventually, search teams uncovered the crown of a skull and several bone fragments roughly 12 feet away from the jeans. A thorough search of the area revealed no other remains, and all the clothing, apart from his jeans and socks, were still missing. None of Charles's personal items, including his wallet or camera, were discovered. The state of his remains was not only strange, but also left many unanswered questions about how he even came to be in that spot. The area was isolated and rugged, making it nearly impossible to reach, especially given the deep snowdrifts at the time of his disappearance. That he managed to hike 12 miles from his camp on foot without shoes in such conditions was mind-boggling. Additionally, it remained unclear why he would have gone to that location in the first place. Authorities linked the missing clothing to a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing, where a person with hypothermia feels overheated and strips off their clothes to cool down in freezing temperatures. However, this theory failed to explain the condition of his remains in such a completely bizarre state. Authorities ultimately ruled Charles McCuller's death as natural, stating that wildlife had ravaged his body after his death. However, his family has rejected this explanation. Charles's brother Steve voiced his disbelief, suggesting that the broken shin bone might tell a different story, one that involves foul play. Steve believes that Charles might have hitched a ride with someone who stole his camera, his gear, and his money, shot him, and dumped his body in the most isolated part of Crater Lake National Park, hoping that the animals would destroy any evidence by the following spring. The mysterious disappearance and death of Charles McCuller remain unsolved to this day, leaving his friends and family with lingering questions and suspicions. Despite the strange circumstances of his remains being found miles from his campsite and in a state of severe decomposition, authorities closed the case, ruling it a death from exposure to the elements. For more missing person stories like this, make sure you check these out.